messed up. Stuff that he was doing. I was like, yeah. That's what everybody should do. Okay.
He's like that. No, that was not smack whatsoever. That's the thing. I don't have smack. So I wrote down. I tried
As in disconnected from all of this shit. Unless she's a real big liar. It was kind of unexpected. I didn't expect that. Not for everybody. Well, the other thing, I don't think you obviously ain't paying for it. So, like, you wouldn't come and be like 10 grand. I should be like, well, whatever. Unless you're not me. I wish I had 10,000. I'd go to the casino. When I woke up this morning, it was not ready to say that. I was going to do engagement. I want to get ahead. I just like learning valuable lesson about this. I know. I made a note. I can do it now. I'm so excited. What do I have to do again? I forgot. Like noon initialize or something like that. What I did. Finally, you worry about this. I don't know. Oh yeah, there we go.
I'm not gonna start until because everything that I want to know more about
It's more like that part that
Boom. Straight note, bitches.
You're jet Sparky.
I did something. Hello world. It's known. Right. I followed on my tutorial. So I was like, I just wanted to make sure that I could do stuff. It was just like setting up node just to make like initially, and it was like just do a test to see if it is actually.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started with today's class. All right. So today, if you are not aware, we are going to start with Node.js. All right. I'll come to that part. What's this? The class kind of looks thinner than the last.
Kind of looks a lot thinner, guys.
No. Yeah. Maybe people.
I'm just sad because we down the three of us. All right.
Maybe people are running late. We'll start with that. We'll give them some time before we start Node.js. All right. George is live streaming. He already said so.
What about George?
All right. So first of all, before we begin to start with Node.js part, I just want to say I already said this on Slack. The effort that you guys put in Project 1 was really, really impressive. Just to be, I'm being super honest. And the reason is I saw some of the things you guys tried, like authentication, Firebase authentication. To be honest, authentication, any kind of authentication, people usually do that in like Project 3. I've seen people did it right now. Some of you guys were successful. Some of them, at least started it. Working with Google APIs, working with Google authentication, people figured that part out. So some of those things were really impressive. Again, as I said, usually we see that in project 3. Project 1, I mean, if you can deploy to GitHub, that's a big that's the challenge. But the good thing was nobody had to demo using localhost, so that was good. I know some of the groups came really close, but I'm kind of especially happy that nobody had to say, oh, localhost and try that. So that's one of the good points. Some of the challenges that I saw that you guys did face and overcame: Firebase authentication. A lot of people complained about that. Cores issues. A lot of teams face that, but in the end, I'm really glad you guys figured it out. Again, this is just the work of 7 weeks. I hope now you guys understand that this course is just I'm going to teach you just the basics and touch some of the stuff. The rest of the stuff you guys face those issues, Googled it, figured it out, and finally the result was there was no core issues. I was able to hit the APIs, I was getting the results, we were able to see it, right? Proxy API, I know some of the people with the cores issues, they kind of went back, figured out proxy APIs, how to deal with that and get the result back, but eventually the results were coming back, right? I'm sure there was no team that was faking those results. Everything was coming from the APIs, right? You guys were able to store database. That was the other requirement. See if I had anything else. We'll come to that. But that was a good effort. Now these were the good points, and as I said, I will always be honest with you. There were some opportunities. I have identified just one opportunity, which I think which I saw kind of lack of. The requirement was for a new technology. I don't feel like that. Any one particular group did like real justice to this requirement. I mean, I saw Google Fonts. That's not real new technology. I mean, we did.
We haven't seen
Materialize, yeah. I mean, that was on the slide. I kind of don't consider that. I mean, it's good. You guys try to figure it out. I'm okay. But as I said the good parts. I said the good part. There is opportunity also. I feel like the new technology. Again, for the next project, keep that in mind. Try to explore something. All right. It kind of helps the class also and you also to see what's something new that you learned. So that was the opportunity part. Again, there are some drawbacks, some good parts. I said, guys did an impressive job, but of course there's always room for improvement, right? I'm sure when you guys get to project 2, it'll be bigger and better. All right. So good job on that. But now we'll come back to our lessons. As I said on slide, the next 6 weeks we're going to have structured lectures for the next 6 weeks. Okay, after 6 weeks starts the project 2. All right, you guys are going to learn a lot in this next 6 weeks. All right, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of confusing stuff, a lot of difficult stuff, right? A lot of challenges. All right, just to give you an overview, we are going to start with Node.js. All right, we are going to jump back into JavaScript. We're going to learn some more advanced concepts of JavaScript. Then we are going to go into databases. We saw Firebase. We are going to look at SQL. All right, MySQL. We're going to look at MySQL database. Then we are going to come back to Node.js advanced concepts. We are going to see how to connect, how to create APIs. All right. Let's see. Then there is, it's not exactly React, but to give you a small introduction of what React was built upon, we'll look into something called handlebars. It's not a true representation again, but it's just to give you a little bit flavor before we move into the third phase of the project, of the program. Okay, so this is going to be what we are going to look over in 6 weeks. All right, there's a lot of stuff. Again, Red Bull, coffee, whatever you need, this is going to help you guys. All right. Let's see. All right. Before we begin, any questions, any comments from anybody else? Oh yeah, one of the challenges I saw, I have written this down. What people said was GitHub issues. I'm going to use the right word, Git issues basically, but GitHub is just a repo, right? It could be GitHub, GitLab, Git Kraken, it doesn't matter. But people had issues with Git basically, right? Merge conflicts, branching, okay? A lot of people, you guys solved that issues, but I would say, go back and revisit those issues. Make sure you clearly understand what's going on, because I will tell you, you will rarely work at a company that's not using Git. Day in, day out, it's all Git, right? You will be pushing, pulling, merge conflicts, branching. This is probably the most important tool in your software engineering build, right? A lot of companies, if they don't use Git, I would question that, what kind of technology they're on. I'll be honest, when I joined USA, they were using something called RTC, At that point, I spoke to my boss. I was like, you know what? I'm kind of doubting myself that if I should have accepted this offer. They're like, no. We are entering to the 21st century. Just give me like a month. And they kind of shifted to GitLab, and we are now on Git. But it's kind of, yeah, and their still legacy code is in a different technology, but that's okay. I don't have to worry about that. But I will tell you, companies, it's all Git, right? Different flavors of Git. I said GitHub, GitLab, Git Kraken. There's a few more, but the foundation is still Git. It doesn't matter. It's the same commands. So again, I will say, this is a good learning opportunity. Keep on it. Study about the branches, push and pull, what's going on when you're trying to merge, reviews, merge requests, MRs or PRs, pull requests, it doesn't matter, right? Even in project 2, you guys are going to work on it. I would say, if you're doing your homework assignment, maybe start with the branch now. Don't protect your master just as a practice. Even though you will be the only one who's working on it, but it's a good practice. Create a branch, merge it, push it to your master, kind of getting in a habit of it, all right? Because Git is not going away, and you will face it in a more professional environment also, okay? All right. Let's see. All right, any questions before we start with Node.js part? All right, so let's see. We started with full stack development. Remember, I was saying initially we are going to be working on the front end part, all right? And then in the second phase, we are going to take a pause from front end, and we are going to look at back end. And the reason is because we are doing full stack development. We cannot stop at front end. If that's your goal, then on Tuesday, that was the end of front end, all right? All you need to know about front end is covered. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that's it, right? From today, we are going to look at back end, Node.js. We studied how to use an API, right? In this phase, we are going to learn how to create an API, right? You're going to create an API, you're going to store the data in your database, and then retrieve in your UI. Okay, so that's part of the full stack development course. Okay, so we are going to start with the end, Node.js. Again, as I said, if you don't, it's a trickle effect, right? If you didn't understand JavaScript, you are not going to understand Node.js. All right. If you do not understand Node.js, you are not going to understand any one of these. All right. Maybe you can understand React, but MongoDB, Express, they don't work. Okay, so that's how important Node.js is. This is, I pulled this from the first day or the second day we were looking at it, right? So we are kind of moving towards the server side, all right? So we kind of completed this, all right? Everybody knows HTML, CSS. We now understand JavaScript. We know what JSON is. We understand user interactions, right? jQuery. We're using jQuery for user interactions. So we're going to pause over there. Now we're going to look what this is, right? We're not going to study MongoDB in this phase. We're going to study MySQL, and then in the next stage we'll see MongoDB. All right, let's skip this one. All right, some of the server-side examples. All right, we saw APIs, right? So the APIs that we are consuming, right? They reside somewhere on the server. Okay, they have exposed that APIs What we do is we call those APIs and we get data back magically, right? We have a JSON, we don't care what's coming from, all right? So in this way, we are going to see how to create those APIs, how to create those JSON, right? Right now we are consuming .json. We just have to worry about parsing it, right? Okay, this is an array in my JSON. Okay, I just need to worry about is this object dot something, and I get my database. Okay, in this phase we have to learn how to create that JSON, right? That somebody else can be consuming, right? We have to create what we call a model, like a template. Okay, this is my JSON. This is how it's going to look like. All right, we are going to study that. Definition, what is a server? Is it a software? Is it a physical device, a physical hardware? What is it? What do you guys think?
A remote computer.
Remote computer? So a physical hardware? What about a software?
The big thing that's in a cool space underneath the ground. And there's lots of them, and there's one guy with a sad life.
We've been watching Silicon Valley too much.
It's gonna be you one day.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
All right. So as Michael and Geoffrey, you can see what people imagine a server to be like a hardware box that's running. That's true. But server can also be like a software. What it means to us is something that I ask something and it just gives me a response. All right, that's a server for me. Right, I'm going to some place and I'm asking a question, and whoever responds to it, that part we consider that's a server. All right. In technical terms, we call that a web server. All right. What this means is a web server is something that you access from your web client. And for us, a web client is a browser, right? My browser goes and contacts something. For us, this has been APIs, all right? So these APIs are residing somewhere. They're residing on something called a web server. What it means is that it's going to process your request and return you some data. That's all a server does. It takes your request and then it returns a response. And it's, for us, that response is basically some data. Okay, that's what a server does. Okay, now in this, using Node.js, we are going to see how to create this thing. All right, we know how to use it. How do we use it? Using APIs, right? We know how to use something that's on the server. Now we are going to learn how to create this part, how to create a web server. Okay. Let's see. Cover this and get to the interesting part. Okay. Everybody kind of get all of these four terms. Server, right? Web client. What is a web client?
The browser.
The browser or anything that is accessing your server, right? Request and response. So from what perspective is request and response? Whose perspective? Is it from the web client perspective or the web server perspective?
The client is requesting information from the server, and the server responds with said information.
Okay, everybody. So the request is something that a web client sends to a server, and response is what the server replies. Okay, that's what a request and response. It's a really important concept because when we get to the coding part, we'll be using variables called request and response. All right, you need to understand what it means. Request is something that you're sending, and response is what the server has the data in it. Okay, so for example, if my client sends a request, and my server will send a response, and all the data will be in this response. Okay, two different variables when we come to the coding part. Request will have all the data that your web client is sending, and response will have all the data that your server is sending. Now from the API perspective, what do you think is a request? We were calling APIs, right? So what data was in request?
Specific.
URL,
Yeah.
Search parameters, right? You guys see a search, but that was the request, right? You are sending some data. You are sending search parameters. You are saying, oh, search this term, all right? That's part of the request. What was the response? The JSON, right? That was the data. That's how we were getting, and that's what it is. Okay, so we know how to send the request, build a request, and ask for data from this, right? In Node.js, we are going to understand how to create this response, all right? We are going to understand how to read this request and then process it, and then how to create the response and send it back to your web client. Okay, that's what Node.js is about. All right. No, not really. That's never gonna happen in these 6 weeks, to be honest. Yeah.
Don't say that. Get motivated for paying. Say that.
All right. So here it is, Node.js. Let me clear this. Now, some of the confusing parts that I want to clarify. Node.js is, you don't have to, the good part of Node.js, you don't have to learn a new programming language, right? If this was 10 years ago, before 2009, if you were to become a full stack developer, for the backend, you would have to learn something like PHP or Java or C# or something, right? With the creation of Node.js, you don't have to learn a new programming language because the syntax is JavaScript, right? Everything you have learned in JavaScript, it applies over here in Node.js, right? The second part is, we call it Node.js. You will see this written like node.js. It does not mean it's a JS file, it's a JavaScript file. That's nothing like that, all right? Node.js, this is just the name, right? There is no JavaScript file, nothing of that sort, right? Node.js is a framework. You have to install the software. You will never find a .js file that you can open and see what the code of Node is, right? Node.js is just advertising. It's a marketing term, and we call it Node.js. That's all it is, right? JS stands for JavaScript, of course, and that's because the syntax is JavaScript. That's all it is, right? Node.js, if you guys are interested, is actually written in C and C++ and also JavaScript, all right? Yes?
Well, I was like fiddling around with it today, this just little short tutorial thing.
Okay.
And it just made an object. It worked. You know, it made a JSON object. So if you're making, is Node.js is just making the JSON objects essentially then?
No.
Okay. Well,
It is one of the things. Node.js is creating your, what did I say, web server part? Right? That's what Node.js is. Node.js is to create your backend code.
oh, so it can be a lot.
It can be a lot. It is a lot. It's like a whole backend language. That's a lot. Yeah. Okay. The second part, the syntax is JavaScript, but remember your browser only understands HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? Your browser does not understand Node.js. It has nothing to do with Node.js. Please remember that. Project 2 comes in. I have had to help groups. They're trying to run their Node.js code in their browser. It is not going to work. It doesn't work. The only common part is the language is the same, but your browser does not understand the JavaScript that Node.js does. It has nothing to do with your browser. It has nothing to do with your web client. All right, Node.js does not run on your web client at all. It runs on your web server. That's where Node.js runs. The reason we are learning Node.js, as I said, if this was before 2009, you would be learning PHP or Java or something to become a full stack developer. All right. But Node.js was created because there was a gap people were scared to come. They thought backend was like this scary dark side that nobody wanted to come. The front end engineers were kind of scared of it. They were like, oh no, not backend. Yeah. So this guy came up with an idea of Node.js. They said, all right, you know what? Just to make it more accessible, why not we make JavaScript run on the backend? All right, it's the same language. I will give the syntax, which is same as JavaScript. It just runs on the backend. All right, so that's why we have Node.js. Again, Node.js is what I call is a framework. Technical terms, it's a runtime environment. Runtime environment. Okay, it's an environment where your JavaScript runs. That's all it does. Okay, and this JavaScript, again, Node.js is part of your server side, is your backend. Any code that is targeting Node.js cannot run on your client side. Please remember that. Okay. The problem, what happens is, this week we are going to study just Node.js. All right. Probably coming week also. Eventually, you have to connect your server and your client. So what language is working on the client side? JavaScript. What's the language on the backend side? It's Node.js, but the syntax is JavaScript. And people get confused. They're like, whoa, it was working. Now it's not working. You know, it never worked.
I'm trying to open it in my browser.
I can assure you it never worked. It was working. I'm like, it's not possible. It's not. This code is not going to run on your this side. The thing is, your projects are going to be in the same folder. People get confused because the same language. They're like, well, this was working over here. Why is it not working over here? Right? Again, from the technical perspective, I'm not going to call Node.js JavaScript or anything. Okay? When I refer to JavaScript, I'm talking about my client code. Okay? Always remember that. When I say you need to update your JavaScript, you need to debug your JavaScript, please go back and look at your JavaScript. I'm talking about the code that you have on your client side. Okay? That we have learned in the 7 weeks. When I say Node.js, I'm talking about your backend code. Or there's an issue with your Node.js code. You're not calling this library correctly in Node.js. Right? I'm not going to say you're not calling your library correctly in the JavaScript code that runs on your server, not on your client. It's too much words. All right? So I'm going to say Node.js.
So
Simple.
What kind of things can you not do? It's just like manipulating the DOM? Is that the only thing you can't do with Node.js?
Yeah, you cannot, because there's what? Again, it's a really good question because there's no DOM, right? DOM is what? Front end, right? Client side. Node.js doesn't care about your DOM. It has nothing to do with HTML. Again, the confusing part is because it's a shared language, that's why people get confused, but it has absolutely nothing to do with client side, right? Okay, the only thing it shares is the same weird JavaScript. That's all it is. Okay.
So it's running server pages, like active server pages?
Yeah, something like that. Yep. PHPs, ASPs, and all that kind. Similar kind of deal. But a new technology. Yep. Okay. Oops. No. Oh, there it is. All right. Let me go ahead. All right. So again, Node.js started in 2009. To me, it's not as developed as PHP or Java or C#. You know, those languages have years of experience and they have been modified, they have been upgraded. It's still going on, and if you Google what companies are using Node.js, you will see some big names. Walmart is using Node.js. You will see Netflix, might be Facebook, a couple of more big companies. But please don't think that they have suddenly dropped their backend and everybody's using Node.js. That's not what it is. It's some component of Netflix that they're using Node.js in. All right. Again, the main backend still Java is more popular language. A lot of people use C#. That still is there. But small components that they think are okay for Node.js to process, people use that. Okay, it's definitely becoming more popular, especially for newer companies, smaller companies, smaller, for example, startups. They kind of use Node.js. It's free, open source. Okay, easier to set up, quickly get it up and running. Don't have to worry about any licensing and stuff. So that's why Node.js is a lot more popular. But still, if you work in a corporate in a big company that's already established, you will see that they're still using kind of more established languages. Okay, all right. Some of the advantages: it reuses JavaScript. We don't have to learn PHP or anything else. All right, we can create our APIs using Node.js. We'll see some of the plugins. So plugins over here just means we were using some other JavaScript libraries. Node.js has a lot of libraries, and you guys must have experience, right? You guys were working on project 1, and a lot of people came to me, hey, this code is in Node.js. Almost every API is supporting Node.js, right? So it's really popular. Easily, you can have a lot of plugins available to you. You will see some of the plugins. Fast implementation. That's also true. You can get your API. You can create your web server up and running in just like 3 lines of code. Okay, we'll see when we get to that. The last part is important. Single-threaded asynchronous model. All right. What is it? What was it? Single-threaded asynchronous model. Very important. All right. So what does this mean? This is a too complicated example. What I will say, I'll try to give a better example. Okay. So here's the situation. People are asking me. Let's suppose people are asking me questions. We start with over here. Like Reggie asked me a question, right? So what's going to happen? I'm going to stop everything. I'm going to think about Reggie's question, and I'm going to answer him. I'm not going to move to Randy until I answer Reggie's question. Okay. Once I have answered Reggie's question, I move to Randy. And Randy asks me the question, and then I'm again stopped over here. I'm like, okay, I need to think, research, whatever. And then I come back and tell Randy, okay, here's the answer. Then I move to Ivana. All right. So I'm blocking myself. That's what's called synchronous. Like my thread, my focus, my attention is on one person. Once that is complete, then I move on to the next one, and next one, and next one, right? So you see, the problem over here is everybody else is waiting unless I get to them, right? That's what we call synchronous threading, all right? Then the other side of it, asynchronous threading. In this case, what happens is Reggie asked me a question, and I have the question back of my head, and I'm thinking about it, but I don't stop over here. I go to Randy, and I say, oh, what's your question? All right? And then Randy asked me a question, and on my back end, I'm like thinking the answer for that, all right? Then I come to Ivana. She asked me the question. Let's suppose she's asking me a question, and I have the answer ready for Reggie. So I will take her question, I'll go back to Reggie, answer him, and then move on to the next person, Joffrey over here. All right? Meanwhile, I get Randy's answer, and then I come back to Randy, answer him, and then I move on to the next person, Michael over here. All right? So I'm processing, and I'm also answering kind of at the same time. So that's what is called asynchronous. All right? And that's what Node.js is. That's how the backend architecture of Node.js works. All right? It's not blocking. It doesn't stop the processing. It kind of puts you whenever your answer is available and then moves on to the next thing. Once the answer is there, goes back and then serves that person or serves that process. Yes?
So would the multi-threaded synchronous be like Reggie asks you a question and you just work on his, but then Randy could ask Nick a question because he's another.
Exactly. That's what multi-threading. I have a clone of me, 10 clones standing, and everybody is asking me clone of me. That's multi-threading. But this is single thread, but asynchronous. Right? You guys have seen asynchronous somewhere else also in JavaScript. What is that? Remember? Ajax call, right? So you call, you make an API call, and don't wait on it, right? You keep processing. Once your promise or once your request is complete, you come back, and then you have the data over there. All right. Same concept over here. Okay. All right. Any questions before we move on to the coding stuff? All right. So that again, that's what Node.js is. It does not run on your browser. Yes.
So then the only place you can view it
View what?
is in like
What was that again?
Node. If you want to see what you did.
Where do you see it?
Okay.
No. What was the question? Where do you see
If
it?
you want to see,
Yeah.
if you have to use it in Git Bash.
Yep.
I did that on a little test today,
Yep.
and I didn't like what you said. I was trying to open it in browser. I'm like, why is this not working? And
Right.
it was like,
It's a
well,
backend.
nothing.
There's no UI. There's nothing over here. It's a backend, right?
Yeah, I had to like terminal, or I had to do it in Git Bash.
Yeah.
You know, the Node.js file. Node,
Right.
And then it shows.
So if I'm coding Node.js, do I have to create an HTML file?
No.
No. There's no HTML file. There's no CSS. Nothing.
Yeah, that was cool.
All right. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, you don't have any style.
I don't have to create 3 files now. I just have to create one JS file, and that's it. Okay.
I understand that. Now it makes sense when you're just like, you know, the back end is the ones that are making it all, and it doesn't really matter how it looks.
Mhm.
Do whatever you want with what.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yep. Again. So this week you will see again when we started 6 weeks ago. You know, there were like smaller concepts of HTML and CSS. A lot of people were like, I don't see the real use of it, right? But Project One, now you see everything came together. Again, Node.js is similar. We will start small. As I said, have patience, young Padawans. We will get there, right? People jump ahead of, it's not easy as it looks like, you know. But once we come to the bigger picture, then people are kind of still hazy about the initial concept that I taught earlier. Then like, oh, okay, yeah. Okay. So again, concentrate on the simpler concepts that look like, but they're not as simple, all right? So we'll follow the same pattern. I'm going to show you some exercises. We'll do some simpler exercises, but trust me, when Saturday rolls in, we'll be like, okay, there'll be a lot more stuff, right? What is it? Yes.
There you are.
Well, again, people think it is simple, again, because as I said, in the previous weeks, I've heard when I introduce some concept, oh yeah, that's easy, but I don't see the use of it. Well, yeah. We'll come to that. All right. It's the same thing over here. All right. So let's get to the fun part. So the first thing is we need to verify. I'm pretty sure everybody has Node installed because we did this in pre-work. But let's just to be sure, you can do node space -v, and it should give you a version number. If you see a version number, it could be anything. You guys might have 8 dot something, it doesn't matter. Just means that Node is installed.
You do have to start off in your root directory?
Anywhere. Again, why don't I have to start at a root directory or anywhere? Because Node is installed on your laptop as a software, so it should be accessible from anywhere. You don't have to go to any folder, nothing.
Yes, baby.
What?
Not yet.
I'm
Oh.
running 11.13.
How do you have 11?
Okay.
I have 10. What is
Because
this?
I updated as soon as I got here.
There's 11.
I'm updating.
Yeah, but I use.
What is it? In Git Bash, yes.
Up-to-date,
Oh, because
but
my
that's not specific.
So in Git Bash, you say node -u. What is it? It isn't. It says not recognized or something.
That's cool. Like,
I got 11.13.
Okay, we'll go with the command prompt if that works.
I might.
All right. Let's do the second. Everybody has installed. Okay. The second test is if you just type in node, you will see this kind of an arrow. So this is basically saying that you are inside the node environment now, right? You can do. Geoffrey was pointing out he saw some examples. 1 + 1. Oops.
Hello world.
Oh, you have to say no.
There needs to be a comma.
It just was, yeah.
Is it better?
Hell world. Hell is
Oh my god, I can't type.
Hell is not defined.
Whoa.
You're really telling it like it
This
is.
is getting real deep here.
There you go. But it still gives me an error, so it doesn't matter. Right? So this is just we'll create some code. And how do I exit out of it? Control C. And you should be able to come out. Control C is same in Mac and Windows also. So this is how you exit the console.
It was just weird, like creating a packet.
Exit node, Control C.
I didn't really know what I was doing.
Okay.
I was just following.
Yes.
I notice every time you hit enter, go down to the next line, you have to put the code in. You can't. So when we do write a code, that all has to be on the same line.
We'll come to that. No, the coding part will be in a JavaScript file. We'll come to that. This was just to test, make sure everybody has Node installed. All right. So looks like everybody has Node installed. So we're going to close that. Yes.
So mine said don't exit. Is it possible?
Dot exit.
Yeah.
So do you do, yeah.
It says.
And then you press enter, it came out.
So what happened is if I did Control C, it
Mhm.
just gave me again the little
Yes.
arrow.
And then press again.
Yeah, and then there's not even doors too.
Well, are you in Git Bash or?
But I know it's in.
Mac is making it. I'm starting to feel like I'm going to put this away. It's like Unix underpinnings.
Oh, it's straight
No.
Unix or Linux?
Well, Mac is based off. Mac OS is based off. Unix and Linux are derivative.
And so no?
Derivatives of the same thing,
It's up.
but they're just under different.
Yeah. When you say the dollar sign,
Linux is based off of open source for.
All right. So let's see how do we create a Node.js code. All right. I'm going to open
Yeah, Unix.
my examples.
I guess because it's not Git Bash is like emulating.
All right. I'm going to create a folder called Hello World, and then I'm going to create a JS file here. The world. That's it, and I'm going to just do a console log. Console log. Hello world. Okay, and I'm going to use Node.js to run this JavaScript. Right now, before when we were doing our HTML part, I needed to create an HTML file, then include that JS file over there, right? But for Node.js, you can simply use Node and the file name, and it will run your Node.js file. So let's go to this folder. Okay. So now I'm in my folder and I see my hello world.js file. Okay. How do you run this file? You say node and then you type in your JavaScript file. Okay. So what happened over here was you see hello world node went inside your JavaScript file and then ran your file. Right now it's a simple file. You just have a console log and it console. Now the difference is I didn't have to go to the browser. I didn't have to open my console log. For Node.js, the console is this thing, the terminal, right? Now again, when we were doing our web client development, front-end development, we were writing a JavaScript and we were seeing console log. Console, again, remember what I said, it's like an interface, right? For front-end JavaScript, the console is your browser. You know, we have a browser tab over there, so that's where you see the outputs. For Node.js, the console is the terminal that you're running Node.js in, right? So that's where you will see the outputs, all right? So anything that you console log, you should be able to see in your terminal. All right. Go ahead and give this a try. Create a JavaScript file and just do a console log. When you run this file, it should come up saying whatever you have typed over here. Actually, there's an activity, sriracha.js. Let's see. I would say git bash, but I think Matt was running from command prompt. Is yours not running from git bash?
Well, I'm running from git bash.
Did you do a node -v? You see the version number? Yeah, that's fine. So just stick to git bash. It will run from git bash. Again, but you have to navigate to your folder, same as
in git bash.
In git bash, yes. Okay. So make a travel stack out the sriracha JS file. Sriracha. Again, this exercise is just to make sure everybody has Node installed correctly. It is running. Everybody knows how to run Node.js code. Again, Node space and the file name that you are trying to run. What happened?
That's a solid one. Don't open that.
Good job, Nick.
It's just console log, guy. That's all you have to do.
Oh, so much of the night.
Please don't disappoint me.
It's like I said.
All right, anyone not able to do the console log with Node.js? You guys got it? Okay. So create a JS file and then run that in using Node. That's good? Running? No VS Code. So version comes up?
Not yet.
Do you have that?
You could go on to the. Oh wait, you guys. Does anybody else just pull down the?
So you have to go inside that folder. You have to CD
Just go to the next one.
into the folder.
It's funny because I started doing this today, and then I was like, I don't know what to do, and then I went under this node thing, and now that I was like, I'm stupid, I literally just had to put nodes for Oh, okay.
Just type it in. So.
Work. Previous argument.
So they have to go inside this. Hover over, you see this.
That's what I created, right?
Again, you have to be in the folder. In your Git bash, you have to be inside the folder where you created your JavaScript file. All right. Everybody good?
Yeah.
All right. No?
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
So what's the issue? Are you inside that folder where you created your JavaScript file? Oh no, file is fine, but you still have to navigate to that file. Are you inside? Are you at the path? No, not node. This thing. First, you have to cd into where your file is. Are you there yet?
Did you coming over here? Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So where's your file? Are you in your desktop over here? You are inside. No, you don't have to go.
Nice.
Everyone in one space. Yeah, we're watching this. So you have to CD some of the stuff that I just heard. Is this the right?
We'll come to that. Hold on.
I'm going to the next one.
So you are in
I like it.
node. You have to come out.
All right.
How do you come out?
See what this does. We watched that. Last night. Oh, really?
If your file is on this that was just a test. You don't have to go inside. All right. Again, you don't have to go inside Node. You just have to do Node and a file name. All right. Let's look at this one.
This is so much cool.
Process.argv.
Yeah.
All right. So Joffrey is going to break this down for us. Process. Now you don't. I will tell you. Okay. You don't have to have knowledge about Node.js to break this down. Process. If you see something, process.argv. What does it tell you? Break it down in terms of variables. What is it?
Process. I don't know. Argument.
No. Again, don't worry about the name. You see something dot something in JavaScript. What have you learned? When do you use a dot notation?
Is a dot notation.
When do you use a dot notation?
I don't know. Function. I can't. I'm stuck. You got me on. Okay. You got me, and I'm just.
What did Michael say?
I don't know. Objects. Oh my god! I knew the answer. I'm sorry.
It's a spotlight.
All right. One more time. Process.argv or argv. It doesn't matter. We'll go to understand what it is. But what does it tell you? Process is an object. Why is it an object? Because I'm using a dot notation. And why do I use a dot notation? Whenever I have an object and I'm trying to access something inside an object. What is argv Joffrey now? Again, not the technical part. Joffrey. So process is an object, right? And argv is a
the parameter.
Is the
Property. There we go. God,
all right.
This was not good. Okay, I failed.
Okay, so process is an object, and then argv is a property that's inside that object, right?
That's a real big object too.
Right? Again, right now I have no idea what process is, what argv is, but I can take a look at it and I can make a smart guess, like Joffrey did over here. The process is an object, and argv is a property inside that object. Right? Simple.
So say it again, please.
Process. All right, you tell me what is process, since you have.
I'm sorry.
What is process?
Oh. Object.
It's an object. You're right. Right. And what is argv?
That is the parameter.
Property.
Property. Oh, property.
It's a property of this
Oh, yes.
object called process. All right.
Okay, so process is an object.
Process is an object, and this object has a property called argv.
Okay.
All right. And since I'm able to access this process without any errors, I'll run this. There are no errors. What does this tell me? That this process is a global object, right? It comes built in with Node.js. When you install Node.js, install libraries, dependencies, and code, and process is part of it. Okay, so it's a global object that's part of Node.js. All right, everybody good?
Now I'm good. I'm right on track.
All right, now we'll see what this is. Now, I don't know what the data type of this argv property is. It could be a string, it could be an integer, it could be an array, it could be an object, it could be anything, right? Right. The only important point over here is that this is a property inside this object. So let's go ahead and run this code. And you will see this is the output for this one. Square bracket. What does the square brackets tell me? An array. All right. So process is an object which has a property called argv, and argv's data type is an array. Okay. So argv is an array. And how do I determine? I saw the square brackets, and then I see this is an array. Okay. Now this array, how many elements does this array has? Let me expand this. Actually, let me expand this. Okay. 2. All right. Now where is this information coming? What does this tell me? That argv, the process, the global object, has a property called argv, and it has 2 elements inside it. These are kind of built in. Did I put anything inside it? No. So Node.js is putting something inside this array. Okay. So this is an array. It has 2 built-in data inside it, right? So this is the first one, and this is the second one. Okay. Now what is the first one representing? If you look at it, it's the file path of where my Node.js is installed. Okay. The second one tells me the file that I'm running, node hello.js. What's the path of that file? It's over here. Okay. Now let's go back. So process.argv. Argv is an array. It has 2 elements inside it. The first element tells me where my Node.js is installed, the path. The second is also a path, and that is a path to the file that I'm running. This is always true. It is going to have these 2 things inside it. Okay. Now this is an array. How do I access an array? If I want to access the first index, 0. Let's go back and run this. So this time it gave me just the file path of node, right? Why? Because I'm now explicitly saying where access the index number 1. If I say the second index, which is index number 1, it should give me the path of the file that I'm running. So you guys are going to have the path of the file that you guys have. What if I do 2? Undefined. Why? There's nothing in index number 2. All right, questions? Yes.
If that is a global object for use in push to it?
Can I do what?
If that's a global object, could you push to it?
Push
Add more to the argv array?
We can, and we'll see how. You don't do it like a dot push. There's a different way to do it. Yeah. But you won't have to worry about pushing anything to argv.
Yeah,
Yes.
I wouldn't know why.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
it yet, but,
Yes.
So my RV says I'm getting an object error, a reference error.
Okay. What did you type in? Process.argv, argv. Is that exactly how you have it?
No, probably not.
Okay. So that's why.
We'll be honest.
This is a reserved keyword from Node.js. It's not going to work if there's a uppercase, lowercase, typo. It's not going to work. So I'm just console logging process.argv, the property. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah, but how did you get the, so I get the, so I get the array.
Yeah.
And then the next step.
So so that's how do I access an array?
Go home.
You just put the,
Yeah, I just put the square brackets and then put the index number. So this will give me the first data.
oh, so you still,
Succeed.
so you still getting the
Or
code
die.
in your.
Yeah.
All the time.
Put it that way. This is back end.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Everybody good?
No, but it's
Yes. Still not running?
I'm not good.
What's
I spelled it right.
process.argv? What's the error?
Reference error.
Okay. How are you running this file?
I'm running inside of bash.
Right. Then, but how do you run this?
Node and file.
Node and space file name.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have you don't have that caret sign or anything? You're not inside the Node console.
I'm at the dollar sign.
Okay. And do you have the right path also where your file exists? Yes. If I do an ls, I should be able to see your file.
Yeah.
Is it there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, that's a good
Yes, sir.
Right? So me run your space. No! So close. Come on. Okay. Process dot rb. Why do you have a comma? Dot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, not oh, okay. All right. This is a object, so I have to access using the dot notation. All right. Is it working now, Randy?
Yes.
Working? All right.
It's not comma notation. It's dot. So.
It's dot notation. Okay. All right. Maybe it's time for a break. Let's take a. We'll start back on 7:45. We'll take it's a good time to take a break. We'll come back and see what this actually means. All right. We'll start at 7:45.
Oh man.
Yes.
I know. I'm sorry to fail you. I know what an object is. God.
Hold on. Yes.
Sorry. Oh my God.
Because it's window. Because you're using
Oh, that's because
yeah, this is because of the, there's no.
I was just like, okay, making sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still found.
Yeah.
It still works.
You have like a C dot slash.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I didn't know there was a difference between like the file paths. Like
Oh yeah, there's no like C drive. Yeah.
I just didn't know that was the difference.
So like the C.
Mac. What is Apple, right?
We gotta do.
Yes.
Yeah, so you see in the folder like for your.
I'm rerunning this every time. I'm rerunning. Oh yeah, because this is just a console terminal. Oh, okay. So run this one. Show me a code. Okay, now run this. So remove the one for here. Remove just just RB.
Overall, it's more versatile.
So the reason it didn't work before that, the charting is I had the backslash.
No space file.
I'm sure.
So when they
So this is our start.
well, you can use it.
Oh, it tells you the process dot RB. RB is an array. Why is it an array? Because you see square brackets.
I guess yeah, right.
How many elements are there inside?
You know all the max.
Oh
yeah. You're doing max, whereas like
if I want to use max,
So I grew up on Windows, then I moved over to Linux because I'm like obsessed with Windows. And then I'm like, yeah, get a MacBook.
and then here's like when I was growing up. Very minimal exposure to something like yeah, like it was never. I never had a problem either. I'm done with it.
Yeah.
But I was always a computer nerd, so I'm always like, okay, all my school's got Windows laptops, and I'm gonna be like, I wanna try something crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wanna build a home media server. And
Yeah. What if you do process RB2? What
and
happens?
just straight that.
Undefined. Undefined? Well, there's nothing.
Oh no, mine were on my too. I've actually found a really good ripping thing.
Netflix wasn't streaming.
It comes in handy,
Back.
Flex is such a beautiful thing.
Wait, what?
Instead of writing out
I like Flex more.
they like are both pretty.
Both are good.
They're both good, but they're also both full path, literally defined in certain specific ways.
Depending on your use case, one's better.
There was the only time I said it was different is and then you can use whatever.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah. Like so. My big project before I had my own server set up with Docker, so that way I had all my server applications containerized. So that way I could update them individually without having like everything just strewn all on top of each other. So if I accidentally broke something, I didn't have to mute my entire computer.
Yeah.
A couple of months
So then you go back and scroll through it. So like this down here.
Yep. I've done that so many times.
That should be already
Once I found out about Docker, I'm like,
Good thing to
I've
show
never
the
used
first
my
two.
computer since. Just Ubuntu and Docker saved my life.
Yeah, when I actually know exactly what I'm doing versus.
The only other thing that I can think of is,
I mean, I know you're just talking about that noise. So that comma,
They're like,
it's a little blurry.
you're like, this is because
Old
it could be
computer, I was running as a media server. I could run my blog.
It's like my mom.
But I never used it, but I'm like, oh, it's a blog.
I'm like to you, it's gonna be amazing. Yeah,
My Flex server, my home automation server,
That's why I don't like
recording stuff.
Now it's
Where access that remotely, not just have that one. And then there's a whole bunch of like, it was just.
So it's new installed globally, it doesn't matter where you're at.
For this stuff.
It's alright. Whatever. It doesn't matter what you're
And I'm
at.
like, this is super cool. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, that's
The global.
I didn't know. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't matter where you're at.
yes.
How are you
ECMAScript. Oh, yeah. I thought ECMAScript was just a version of like the version of JavaScript. Because like
Yes.
the JavaScript that we have right now is not JavaScript as it was initially.
Yeah, it's really hard to explain.
This is my example.
Yeah.
Basically,
We're going for my social
try to standardize.
So these are links with podcasts. So
Make it more powerful, give more features, make it less resources.
Yeah, but some of the things, some of the syntax
oh, does it?
just
This is just an image.
Look up TypeScript.
yeah, they love.
Just ignores me.
I
I like it.
There's a lot. There's a lot that comes into it. But one of the things that talks about Node is that
Nick can help us understand what ECMAScript is.
yeah, script.
Oh.
I don't use
That's a well.
that's
not
the
That's not what you're
I lied. Just now.
yeah, it's like ES6.
I keep Googling this stuff.
It's a simple script.
Is that for
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
I'm not fussed about it.
You know,
Right, yeah.
it looks so small.
Yeah, no, so that's why it's very specific. It won't work unless you exactly follow.
Most modern browsers have it, but certain older versions of it.
Yeah.
So basically Internet Explorer. Whenever you say like most browsers, you're just saying everything but Internet Explorer. even Edge will run it, especially since they now have their new Canary build out. Did you hear about that, Daniel?
What was that?
Microsoft's released the Canary build.
Oh yeah, I saw
Edge
that.
with the built with the Chrome.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of, 10 years ago, Microsoft was like this closed company, and they would like no, but now they have released the code for Visual Studio. They're
They
like
own
open
GitHub.
source. They own GitHub, and they made everything private free. I mean,
Azure,
yeah.
and they're like super heavy into like this open source.
That's the future, fam.
That's the future. Yeah.
Open source it.
Channel 9. It's a Game of Thrones.
Isles. All about fish.
So Ben,
Mm-hmm.
your career as a backend developer, have you ever worked with Ruby or Rails?
I have not. I work mostly with Java.
Do you find that it's on its way out, or do you find like it's more like legacy?
I think it's more, I wouldn't say legacy, but more like, as I said, jQuery, with the React and Angular, jQuery is kind of losing its place. Similar with Ruby on Rails, because of Node.js and kind of came in as a strawman and kind of changed the whole.
You mentioned Ruby. I remember when that was like, oh, the whole thing.
Yeah, no. Same with jQuery. jQuery was, you look at any legacy website, we call it legacy now, legacy like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. jQuery is there. You will run into websites that dollar sign all over the place. That's a popular.
If you're looking at that.
So React has the potential to become the jQuery of our time. Now, 15 years later, somebody said, React? That's how.
It's interesting. It's like they're all built on.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying JavaScript is the foundation. You need to know JavaScript. That's why in interviews, people will ask you JavaScript question. React, Angular, those are like kind of bonuses. Oh, okay, good that you know it. But do you know JavaScript?
Yeah. No. And from all the stuff I've seen, like I want to see my resume because all of the jobs at entry level are like they literally just say, do you know Bootstrap, HTML, CSS, JavaScript?
Yeah.
And then some other ones, yeah, they might have requirements, but it's not like a requirement. It's just like, hey, this is helpful if you know this.
Yeah. Ali, you were saying something?
This is the test
A lot of places are they would start your interview with JavaScript. They would text some JavaScript. And then you say, because a lot of people, not everybody is in React. A lot of people are in React. It doesn't mean that they won't be able to understand. What is not going to change is the underlying foundation, which is JavaScript. That's not going to change. We're still going to now again see the jQuery is like away, but the foundation is JavaScript.
The next thing we got
Right now it's popular. 15 years later,
it'll be React too.
What was that?
What's the difference between
Oh.
Angular 1 and Angular 2?
It's like a whole new programming
Well, you
language that
see
they.
one's cute and one's twos, and eventually they'll get to where it's just right.
That's their biggest mistake that they did, and React took over. They thought Angular 1 was actually really popular,
It's not until they get
and
to
Facebook was
90.
lagging behind with React. There was no way to cover the distance, but they came up with Angular 2 and they destroyed everything. And people were, just to spite Google, they went to React, and
now that's why React.
that's why, yeah.
Good for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They started this movement, but with Angular 2 they kind of
So,
changed the whole thing.
what's the whole thing with Vue?
Yeah, Vue is the third.
Is that like the newest one?
It's not newest one, but it's like the third, like Angular, React, and then Vue. Vue, the thing is that Vue is actually, what I've heard, is better than both of them. But again, if you have Google backing something, if you have Facebook backing something, it's kind of hard to compete with those two. Yeah.
And then there's TypeScript and Dart and just so many other things I just don't even want to know about.
All right, everybody here? All right. Everybody good with this, because now we are going to look at some more advanced concepts. So argv, arg means arguments. All right. So again, what I said, the console, there's no UI. All right. But Node.js still allows some user inputs, right? The user, there has to be some interaction with the user. And how do you have this interaction? Is through this this variable over here, process.argv. Now please observe when I do this hello.js, right? What was the output? I had an array with 2 elements inside it. All right. Now let's suppose I do if I add something to it. Let's say first. What changed? Still the array, and kind of added that last to the last element. Added more. Keep going. So processed argv is array of arguments, and this is how Node.js takes user input. The first 2 elements or the first 2 indexes are reserved. You cannot do anything with the first 2 indexes. Anything that you have after that kind of adds on and puts that into this array. Right? Why is this important? You can read what you are trying to send to your code. All right, let me go back again and we'll see what it means. All right, let's go back to the first one. Console process .argv 3. Oh, actually 2. Sorry. So what does this mean? That I'm trying to access index 2 of the array argv. And what should be at my index 2? I say node, my hello.js, and whatever I type in afterwards. All right. So this is my first argument. Let's say first argument, and then you see. Let me comment this out so you can clearly see this. It gives me whatever I'm typing it in. All right. This is the way that you can read user input. Let's suppose I'm going to show you some more examples, but let's suppose my program does something. What my program does is going to print out saying hello world, comma, space, and then whatever the name that user gives it. Process.argv 2. Right, so you see this is all my program does. I give it a name, right? Any name, username, let's suppose. All right, what it does is it takes this argument and appends it to my string that already exists. Very simple example, right? But what we have to understand is anything that you want to pass into your program from the console, you need to add it to this array, process.argv. And how do you add it? Anything after the file name, Node is going to consider it as an argument that you are trying to pass into your program. Okay, anything that is after my file name. Okay, and how does it separate? If I have a space, it will consider this as separate and this as separate. All right, now how many arguments do I have? I have 2. One this and the second one. They are separated by space. So if I do still run this one, still going to be my first name. If I want to access the next one, I have to do 3. Again, why 3? 0 and 1 are reserved for Node.js installation path. The index number 1 is reserved for the file that I'm trying to access, the path of that file. Anything after that is up to you, whatever you want to pass in. I could pass in a number. Node.js, let me change this to 2, a number, so it says 23. I could pass in a number and a string. Okay, it doesn't matter. Please note that number or string or anything, everything comes in as a string. So if you are trying to use it as a number, we'll have to convert it. Right? Let's suppose change this. I'm trying to create what my program does is it adds 2 numbers. All right. This program takes in 2 numbers and returns or console logs the result. Okay. Var first number I'm going to hardcode this. Var second number, hardcode this. All right. So console log first number plus second number. Let's comment this out. Okay. Simple. Same thing. I'm hard coding 2 numbers and I'm adding them, and then Node runs it and outputs the number. Now, what is the problem? It's always going to return me 5. I'm not doing anything, right? Now I want to include user input. I want the user to use basically my calculator and then find out what the result is. Okay. So what do I have to do with this? The user should give me 2 numbers, 4 and 5. Right? I'm going to add these numbers and then return the output. Right? That's my goal. But at this point, it still gives me 5 because I've kind of hard coded these numbers. I'm not doing anything. So since my user input, what's the element number? What is the index number for this one? In the process argv, 2. And what is this one? 3. So exactly, process dot argv 2 and then process dot argv 3. Do I have to declare the array? No. Oh no, you don't have to clear it. As soon as the program ends, it kind of auto clears it. Yeah, you don't have to clear it. All right, so what should be the result now? Because they're strings. Excellent. So what did I say? The inputs are always going to be string. It doesn't care if it's a number or not. So it takes in 4, 5 and adds it as a string. So let's go ahead and convert this, and we can use our old parse int method. Parse this as a number and then parse this as a number 2. Same one parentheses. Okay. Now I get the right number 9. Let's see. Okay. I could compare the arguments also. Let's say if first number is equal to second number, console log both are same. Okay. Else console log not same. So if I do 5 and 5, it says both are same, right? Like different operation. I can do anything with the user input. Depends what I'm trying to, what program that I'm trying to write. Okay, but the important point over here is if you want any arguments, any user input into your Node.js program, you use the process.argv_array. After the first two indexes, 0 and 1, anything after that is considered an argument that goes inside your Node.js program. Okay. See. So anything separated by a space is considered a new argument. So if I do console log 2, it gives me this one. What if I want this to be the same? I mean, these are all other things that once you are working on it, you can figure this out. Within the double quotes, it's going to consider this as one argument. If you don't want to separate it by space, you think this is one argument, then you put it in a double quotes or a single quote. Again, both of them will work. Okay? All right. Any questions? Kind of getting hang of it? All right. So let's go ahead and try it. Let's do the next exercise. It's similar to the one that I just showed. You're going to take in two inputs and then compare them actually. Let's see. Oh, actually, Nick, it's the 0, 5. Calculator is the next one. I'm going to shock them slowly. So first, let's do the fifth one. The parameter check, yes. So in this one, take in two user inputs and then compare them. You can try the parsing one that I just did, just to make sure you are clear on what's going on. Okay, and then we'll start we'll do the little bit more difficult exercise.
So Daniel,
Yes.
every time we have to type in the node in that in our file.
Mm-hmm.
So is that going to be throughout? Like that'll be every single time you want to do something like that?
Yes. For now, if you're trying to run a node program, yes, that's how you do it.
But I'm assuming there's an easier, better way.
So again, it's not a easier or better way. Your node code runs on the server, right? So you need to deploy this node code on somewhere else, and behind the scenes they are still doing the same thing. It's going to be a node, somebody else is going to run, but it's always going to be node and your file maker. Yeah. Yes.
So like, mine's working, but when I just left it blank at first, I didn't put any of the, I didn't put any arguments. I just said no, right? Then I hit enter by accident, and it returned they are equal when I haven't put in it.
It returned what?
It returned they are equal. I said like if they're equal, return.
Right. So are they equal? They are kind of.
It's 0 and 0.
Yeah, because it's nothing. So undefined is equal to undefined. True.
Nothing is nothing.
Yeah, that's JavaScript. Yeah. All right. Any questions on this before we start the next exercise? What is that? Oh, the right now is let's see. Let's go back to Slack. Create a command line node application that takes in two parameters and outputs whether they are equal or not. It's on Slack on the channel. Do you see that? Okay. So what does that mean? You have to create a application that takes in two parameters. So this is what we did right now, right?
What happens?
Two parameters.
What happens?
Okay. And then what's the next? Did you and you have to compare if these two are equal or not.
2 and 3.
Yeah, the 2 and the 3 arguments. Are they equal or not? So you have to write a program that takes in two arguments, and then it compares them and tells you whether they both are same or not. All right, let me show you the next one. Any kind of getting the argument concept? How do you? This is basically for user input. All right. So let's do the next one, and this will kind of help you understand even better. This is we are going to create a calculator. Let's see. All right, let's look at the instructions first. All right, create a command line node application that takes in parameters like these. All right, the first thing is I'm going to create a JavaScript file. And what am I going to name my JavaScript file? Calculator, because if I see this, what is this saying? This is saying node and run this file. Okay. So I'm going to create a calculator.js file. And then what does it say? How many arguments is my program taking? 2. What are the 2 arguments that my program is taking? What is it?
1 and 2. I mean,
how many arguments do you see over here?
Okay, 3 arguments.
3. 3. Why 3? Because these are separated by space. This is the first one. This is the second argument. This is the third argument. So my program is taking 3 arguments. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Okay? So if my program is taking 3 arguments, what are the index that I'm trying to access? 2, 3, and 4. Excellent. Okay. So my process argv array index number 2, 3, and 4 will have my 3 arguments. The first one is going to be this thing, and these are going to be this. So my first one is going to be a string. Okay. The second two are going to be numbers. Okay, so my program is taking 3 arguments. The first one is a string because I look at the output, they're saying it should be a word: add, subtract, multiply, divide. Okay, the second two are going to be numbers. Right, the first one tells me what do I have to do with these 2 arguments. The first one is add, so my program should read this and then prepare itself saying that the next 2 numbers I'm going to add them and return the output, so 3. If I do subtract, my program should be recognized and say the next 2 numbers I need to minus them, subtract them, so the output is going to be 3. All right, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what is at a high level what's going on? I'm going to read the first argument and I'm going to determine what do I have to do. Right? If it's an add, then the next one I'm going to add and console log the result. So if statements, if my first argument is an add, then I have to add these 2. If else if my first argument is a subtract, I have to do this. If else, if it's a multiply, I have to do this. If else divide, then do this, then do this. If it's none of these, then you can put an error saying console log, oh, none of these exist, or you selected a wrong option. Okay, give it a try and see how far you get, right? The first thing I will do is create the file and just console log process.argv just to make sure that you are in the right path, everything is good, you're able to run that file before anything, even you begin anything. Or you can simply do a console log also. So what I mean is, so I'm going to create a folder here. I'm going to call it calculator. Okay, and I'm going to create my node file inside this. So calculator.js. Okay, now I want to make sure that this file is good and running, so I'll just console log calculator. Okay, and then I'm going to go to my terminal. So I need to come out of it, go to this where this file exists. This is example number 6. So cd06. Okay, so I'm going to go into my calculator folder, ls, and there's my file. Okay, so I'm in the right folder now, and I'm going to just run this, and it should give me calculator as an output. So node calculator. Okay, so now I'm the right path, my code is set up, everything looks good. Now I can proceed with the exercise.
So which part? Which exercise? Okay, so let's create a few.
See, I got that far.
So don't forget that you're going to be getting it from the process engineer.
Yeah, I have that.
So
And I have like,
so those two have, so that array already has two items. So your index is starting at
two.
That's 3.5.
Two is supposed to be after transmitting by
so you're
in that statement.
you could do an if else statement, or you could do a switch statement. So you can just do if operation is equal to whatever you want it to do whatever. Else is equal to operation is equal to subtract, do whatever. Else if. Keep going through. Yes. So I mean I opted to go for a switch statement instead.
Right. Decide when you create a new
So switch is it's like an if else statement, except it's only going to do so it runs this if the variable you're checking here is equal to that, if it renders true. So in the case that this one run equals true, then we're going to do this, and then we have rating stop. So I would also run on W3 schools to switch. Because it's yes. Yes.
I love the response.
Oh yeah. No. I don't want to. Yes, that one was easy.
Do a console log. Yeah.
Scroll down a little bit. I want to see if the one after this is easy.
There is nothing after algebra. It's just a hint. Hint. Assume the algebra will always be in this exact form and will always be addition.
So can I keep adding numbers into this thing?
Yeah. You just have to
Like, so if I keep adding one, I can it will just automatically put it into the array. Like I want to
Now you just have to worry about how to write.
something else, because I was trying that and it was not, it was like.
You can add as many parameters as you want.
But every time, isn't it like every time you hit enter, it then just clears
Yeah,
out?
it clears
It
it.
doesn't save what you have previously.
It only runs at that specific time. So if you do calculator JS space 1 space 1 space 1 space 1 space 1, so it'll log all those. It'll put it in the argv array, but only at the time that the application is running.
Oh, okay. That makes
It's not saving anything.
Are you gonna learn the secret behind your system?
Yeah.
Secret behind what?
Like having those links persist, or is it not important to have that happen?
For well, when you run an app, for example, and you pass it, pass in like arguments. So depending on what you're trying to do, you don't necessarily need to persist those arguments because most of the time, like you guys have been running like all those bash commands, like the ls command, right? It lists directory contents, and you can add different parameters to it. It'll list, the folder, and then if you add, another parameter, it'll list like read write permissions and stuff like that. So it really just depends on what it's trying to do. In terms of persistence, I mean, we'll be learning about like databases and stuff. So that'll be persisting data. This is just running like a console application. So indeed, a tool. You guys get it working? See? No? 4K. What happened?
Trying to figure it out.
Good stuff. Sorry, you could use ifs, they essentially get the same thing. Ifs and switches, they essentially get the same thing.
They just check to see if it's rendered.
Yeah, with the switch you have cases and if states.
And then you have the default if nothing if the input doesn't fit any of those. So that's the
Yeah, that was it.
Break is to just say stop running this switch and you're done. If you don't have that, then it's just
Keep it simple. You know, switch didn't use it. And then you can always convert it.
It was like every 5 seconds.
Go down where
Yeah, because I was with Tyler.
all of it's
Oh, correction. What is the parse? Yeah.
Did you do the bonus ones?
I did one of the bonus ones.
Which one was that?
The easy ones.
You mean the math dot, power, whatever it is?
Yes.
The one-liners?
Yes. The one where I just have to do exactly like I did with multiplication. Put one extra star. Yeah.
You could try the algebra one. The algebra one is,
Probably not as hard as I
I mean, it's, you have to basically look at, the argument itself, and you have to pick out, like, we're trying to find x. Like, as if you were, solving the problem. So if you have, 4x plus...
Right, so my program has 3 arguments. The first one is the operand, basically add, subtract, multiply, divide.
So you solve for x.
And how do I get it? If I access the argv array at index number 2.
In this particular context, you can only write it for just something.
And my next 2 are my numbers. For example, 1 and 2.
You can't go beyond that. Otherwise, that becomes
Right? How do I access my numbers? Let's call it first number. And it's going to be at index number 3. My second number is going to be at index number 4. Let's go ahead and console log to make sure this is working. First,
there's a math class, and math has a bunch of functions. This is Google JavaScript math.
and my second number. So if I run this, it should just output 1 and 2. Add 1, 2. Okay. I haven't done any operations yet. I'm just trying to get the arguments in and making sure this is working. So my first one is add, subtract, or whatever. The third argument is the numbers. So I'm able to get all these things in my program now. Let's do subtract and console logs these two things. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm able to access these numbers.
What do you get?
That might be Is it a little different?
Well, there's no other way to do it.
Well, I had that.
I want to see.
Yeah, how are you doing it?
Like I added it in
there. He's like, what are you doing? What is it?
See, like I put a number in there, and then it got weird. Oh, that was supposed to be that, and that was supposed to be that. And then when I console all last, it comes up with
Yep. Okay.
So it's still that, I don't know. Now I just broke it. I need to step back. If it was there, I thought seemed pretty simple. I added them into the array.
That's what I hear. It was there. I was trying to it was working before.
Well, I mean, it wasn't working, but there was things in the array. But like you said, it's that given moment. Like
before you do the arithmetic, there's 3 things that you need, which is this here. That's all you should have before you do any arithmetic. You don't need to declare anything else. You don't need to do anything else. Because argv is an array, and you're specifying an index at which to grab certain elements in the argv array.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But I should have done that first for like create a variable and then add it in there.
Added in where?
But that like I went into nodes and added it in the array. I thought that was the point that we added things to that because that's showing.
Well, when you do this, it takes so when you run node, process argv adds these guys into the argv array. So you don't
does that?
Yeah, you don't need an array. That's what argv is.
I was talking for 30 minutes.
Yeah. You don't need an array, man. You don't need an array. That's what I'm saying. Argv is already an array.
Okay, that makes it easier then. Then I look at it.
Because if you so I just do and number transfer everything to a number. So when you just log argv, what is this? It's an array, right? So this is a 0 index, first index, second, third, and fourth. So it's already an array. All we're doing here is we're grabbing everything underneath these guys. So it's already an array.
Okay, so I just have this really simple, a lot more simple.
Yes.
I had that part, I just didn't do that part. If you just tell it what to do and it does it.
Well, no, it doesn't do anything yet. We have to define the arithmetic. We have no arithmetic here. Yeah, so we're saying I just node run this, and these are my arguments. So the first argument is the operator that, in terms of what kind of arithmetic we're going to do. And so we look at this, save it to a variable. We look at these two, save those two to a variable, and then once we have all of our values, this is where we do all of the arithmetic.
Okay, that part, the operator, I didn't even have that.
Remember the jQuery calculator that we did long ways back? So remember when we clicked the minus button, it said to subtract. We clicked plus, it said to add. So you have to translate that in here now. So instead of clicking on the button, we're actually just typing it and saying subtract 5 minus 4 is what we're saying. So now you have to say, do all your arithmetic thing. If it's subtract, if it's add, if it's multiply, divide, and so forth. Do this.
So let me get the operator, and that might make this. It wouldn't be undefined every time.
That is pretty funny. It's in an array, you take it out, you put it back into its own array, and then you take that out. Silly goose. Come on now.
Alright, so I'm going to do the first one, the add one. So I have my operand, I have my first number, I have my second number. I have confirmed it when I run my code. It just console, it doesn't do anything, but it consoles log correctly. So this means I'm good until here. Okay. So what am I doing? Let's do the add one. So let's go back to the instruction. The first one says when I do this, it should give me a result, which is the addition of the two numbers. Okay. And my second argument, this add, subtract, or whatever, this should tell me what I have to do with the next two arguments, which are numbers. So I'm going to start with a if statement. If my operand, which is my second argument, is equal to add, then I need to add these two numbers. Okay, and then console log that. That's all. But these two are string right now. Everybody recognize that? So I cannot add it, so I have to convert it into numbers, parse it. So I'm going to change, I could change this over here because I know that these are always going to be numbers. So I can do parse int, oops, and then convert this into numbers, parse int. Okay, just to make sure this is still good. Okay, still running, no issues. So what am I doing? I'm taking these two arguments and converting it into a number because I know these two are going to be numbers. So if it is an add, I am going to add these two numbers. So first number plus second number. Okay. Let's save it to a variable called result. And then console log results. Say the result is result. Let me clear this. Node, my file name. Okay. First argument add. Let's add these two numbers. The result is 7. Okay, let's try a few more use cases just to make sure it's good. Should be 9. Okay, the result is 9. All right. The example was 1 and 2, so let's try that. 2, 1 space 2. The result is 3. So my addition part of my calculator is working. Okay. Now if I want to do a subtract, I'm going to add another if condition, else if subtract those two numbers and then output exactly the same way. Just your operand is now changing. Okay, so you would do else if operand is equal to subtract, then what do? Var result is equal to first number minus second number, and then console log the result is result. Okay. I have to keep redeclaring my result variable, so let's go ahead and take this out, and then let's make a global variable var result. Okay. Assign a 0 so that it is a number, and then let's run this to make sure this is our add is working first. Make sure I didn't break any code. 1 and 2. Okay, the result is 3, it still works. Let's try one more. 4 and 5 should result as a 9. Okay, this is good. Now let's try our subtract. So node file name subtract 4 and 3 should be 1. Looks good. Let's try 7 and 5 2. Let's try a smaller number first. This should give me negative. Okay. So in this way my addition and my subtraction are working. Similarly you have to do for multiply, divide, what's the last one? Remainder. Okay, for remainder you're going to use the percentage sign. Questions? Working? That is working? Okay. Over here. Left add is okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a little bit simpler, so you don't have to worry about looping here. But I see what you're saying because it's an array. You can loop start those things. Yeah, it's just a little bit more complicated way to work. It's simpler thing. Yeah, so you can just hard code say my second, third index is going to be a number. My second index is going to be operand, whatever. My third is going to be right. Just going up. So I'm kind of like hard coding. I'm saying that this index is always going to be random. Now this code is going to break if I pass in a string, right? Because that's not what I'm doing. So I'm not worried about any error. So instead of this, if I pass in string, kind of breaks, says not a number, gives me an error. Right. Huh? NaN, not a number.
Oh,
that's what it means.
Yeah, it's the
Yep.
the one next to your shape.
So
Both of them look right.
Oh, now I get
divide. Divide.
Why do they have a negative one? So my results.
Yeah, because your first number is smaller than the second one. Yeah. How about the next one? Divide.
I was trying to type it, so.
Try the multiply one. You try this one? Like 5.
No.
You have to try it. This is a challenge. I already did the first two for you guys. So, yeah. Yeah. 2 more FLs. Yeah. Actually 3. Multiply, divide, and remainder. So you still have 3 more conditions left over here. We just did the first 2. Complete the other 3.
Yeah, I didn't. I was kind of, like, I just put also all the time, so I didn't
So you were telling me.
Nick, can you slack out the 7th one? 7th exercise, multiples. Alright, for those of you who are finished with this one, try the next one. Multiples. You have to find multiples of 6. He's going to slack out. I'll stay on this activity for now. That's kind of like a more bonus one. So these numbers are going to be stored in the process by Kirby. Automatically stores those numbers inside the array. So let's see what's the array. Syntax array is 9 numbers. Okay, show me how so let's see, line numbers. Cannot find module. Yes. So we have a type
How did you do that square? Because I know 7 times 7 is not 8,000. 82? No, 823,523.
So it's to the power of.
What did you? I did the math pow. Math pow.
Yeah.
So was it math pow or was it? What was the instructions for that one again?
7 times 2. Wait.
What else? So it's exponential.
Oh.
So it's exponential. So it's
I did it.
so it's just star. It's just star star.
Yeah, you just
What is this one piece?
Yeah, it's just going to be star star, and then it will just do that number to the power of.
Jesus.
I literally started last. Yeah. Yeah, it literally is one of those things. That's why I like it. Yeah, that's it. Your max.
Okay, can I see your thing?
Hi. Okay,
I'm sorry. I don't mean
I can pull that. Here it is. I did a switch statement. I didn't do this.
That's fine. What is the square Damn it, you told me I just was looking for different things.
It's okay.
Thank
That's
you.
what happened.
Thank you.
That's what happened.
Well, like, I'm trying to make this way harder than it needs to be.
That is life.
So it should be.
I mean, where would humanity be if we didn't beat ourselves with sticks every once in a while?
That's true.
I jumped in. I started
I
listening
think-
way late.
I think Blair would know the answer to this question.
We would be.
Anthropologists.
We'd be much further along. We just you got along with each other.
No, we beat ourselves with sticks. I mean, think about dumb citizen.
Who?
Simpson?
Oh, I thought you said dumb citizen.
Dumb citizen? No. I want to know this guy. Because think of dumb citizen. He tried inventing the light bulb, failed miserably, and then he gave up.
I heard some quote that was like,
First time.
yeah, like success is like 99% perspiration.
We'll see.
Whatever, something
Is that the
Gatorade slogan?
Tom Edison's and if at first you don't succeed, buy the patent for the thing. Just hire a bunch of people who are smarter than you.
That's kind of how businesses go.
No, Tesla was the other way around.
Tesla was smart and
Try
was
this
able to do all
You already got the
basically.
And look who's the inventor of. Yeah, I don't even know that. Edison, baby. Edison did what you do in America. You get the people who are smarter than you, you put them in a room, and then they
Isn't
put out
Edison
shit.
the one who electrocuted the elephant?
Whoa. He electrocuted an elephant?
Yeah, you should look it up.
This got really dark.
I
I do that. I leave from drunk
I mean, that was before we cared
I didn't know that he was electrocuted
about anything.
What the
Like,
There's probably a video of it. Are you finding a video of it?
You got to bend it.
It's
like one of the first things
Just like flip through all these
Yes.
That's really disturbing. This is why the internet should not be around. People shouldn't know facts like that. There's no reason for you to put that out in the air.
Wait, what?
He created electricity.
So, but I
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure Ben Franklin had electricity before Edison.
Oh, yeah.
Human was created electricity.
Yeah, I mean Zeus was throwing it around way before humans were swinging around it.
He found it and created it.
Yeah, that was Zeus, right?
That was
Zeus was out flying the sky one day, and then he was going to get struck by lightning because he had a key tied to his kite for some reason. But then he caught it, and then he threw it down at the humans, and he gave them fire.
I love this story.
Huh?
Oh, whoops. Okay, what did I say this?
Sometimes.
There we go. Alright.
So yeah, he bought the patent for the light bulb and made adjustments to that.
Did you believe buy it from Tesla? It wasn't Tesla that was like more efficient, it was the better energy source.
There's a lot of conspiracies about what Tesla was up to.
Yeah, because then they
About
did
what
like weird
conspiracy
math.
Whoa! And the government bought the rights to that.
Yes.
You're going to have so you're going to have to
shit.
take the number. So
Yeah,
David
So
Right, go ahead.
Tell me
the
what.
way that
tell me
I
what it's
would
doing.
usually do it is
Well,
you
you tell
just
me what the code is.
Or
no,
no,
wait,
tell
wait,
me,
wait,
are you
wait.
getting anything?
So yeah.
and keep subtracting
Like,
until
damn you, I
that
have to
number
watch
that
a
you
movie.
have is
It looks like. Yeah.
Yeah.
the modulo of like the remainder between 0 when divided by
Yeah.
6.
How about carrots?
Yeah, you could create.
So you
Or you do like
So
modulo.
they had to not get the powers that be and want things.
Defending.
I would believe that. I remember when I did like Ford Tesla got car, you know, like the electrical car was supposed to be out, like it was supposed to be here, and all of a sudden it just.
It would multiply.
Just if
Yeah.
it should be else,
It should be also.
right? Because you are going down the path. You're saying if this is
So
the
each one should be else.
It's not really worth it. If you do a if, it's a separate, totally separate statement. It's you want everything to be connected.
It's something like this.
Okay. Okay.
So you have your number, say you do modulo 6 equal to 0, and then multiply.
Oh, I was thinking we have something along the lines of like,
Yes.
instead of being
So
marginally
that's
better,
so
it's like
fun.
exponentially better than what trucks can do on the electrical. It's just like,
Because I know companies that, yeah, they pledge to buy a lot. I mean, they've already bought stock that's not even out there.
All right, you guys working on the multiples one?
I don't know, man. You know, I'm not I don't know. So my trying to test that.
That the number that you
I'm gonna not be able to conspiracy theorist.
and then add it to the total.
Multiples. The next
I'm
exercise.
gonna watch it because
Nick
that's
slacked
exactly
out?
what I did.
Yeah. Nick. So if you're done with the calculator one, Nick slacked out the next one, and it is you have to find the multiples of 6. It's kind of bonus one. I'll start at 9 o'clock, something different. So this is just a practice one. So you just have to similar code, take a number as an input, and then find out if it's a multiple of 6 or not. We have done this exercise in JavaScript. We are just doing this in Node.js now.
Do the algebra thing in the calculator.
The algebra thing.
Yeah.
The bonus one?
Yeah. That one. Oh. Just so I can see what you think.
So you have to do 4x plus 2 is equal to 10. So what's going on? What is x?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh. So that's 6, x is 4. No, x is 2.
So how did you come to
2 times 4 plus 2. Whoa. I don't want to do it this way. I don't want to.
That's how you do it. Again, this is
I said
yeah.
the answer though. I can look at it. And somebody
What do you
said
mean
the
look at
answer
it?
back there too.
Yeah, so again,
But you have to write.
yeah, you have to write the code is simple string parsing. That's the formula. But what do you have to do? You have to kind of break it down, and then always move this part over here, subtract it, and then divide whatever the result is by whatever that thing is. So it's a string operation. You have to break this into two, and again, you see the what's the requirement? It says it's exactly going to be always is going to be in this format. All right. So I can kind of assume that if it is, there's going to be a number and there's going to be a x over here.
So Daniel,
Right.
is it
Do
like
a split.
simple equation, like with variables?
Yeah.
Simple equation with the
Right.
variable.
Right. So you can break it down, split it up, and then kind of ignore this one, and then just use this part. You know, it's a string, right? So a string dot split, or you can use a index of or something like that.
Let's see. So it's like
Yeah. So you're going to get this whole thing as a string, right? So my first index is going to be a number. Second is going to be a variable, then the sign, then something. So you can use the index of over here so that you know anything before this is going to be a number. Anyway, this is more like a string parsers versus like a Node.js, or it's more like a trick question. How do you parse this and kind of find out a number? Versus anything to do with Node.js or anything. It's more like parsing. How would you parse this formula? I mean, you can find this. This is always going to be variable x, but this number could be 2 digits or 3 digits or 1 digit. It doesn't matter, right? So what you can do is you can find what's the index of this, right? So anything before this, you will consider that as like just one number. So whatever this whole string is, dot index of this thing. So if the index is 0, 1, 2, this means 0 and 1 is one number. If the index is 3, this means 0, 1, and 2. Anything before that is one number. So again, it's more like a string parsing skill versus anything to do with Node.js. Right? So anything after this index is going to be a sign, plus, minus, multiply, or whatever. So if you find the index of this one and add 1, so you will get the operand, plus, minus, or whatever. And similarly, you can find the index of equal to. Anything before equal to would be a number.
Yeah.
It's more like a string parsing, basically.
You only need to do it if it's 6.
Okay, but everyone was able to complete this part. Okay. All right, so let me show you one more thing, and then we'll do the next one. So the multiples of 6 is also just a bonus activity. Again, it has less to do with Node.js, more like a kind of interview question that we practice. You know, how would you write code to find multiples of a number that is an input, right? So you go from 0 to that index, divide by those numbers, and find out if it's a multiple of that number or not. Okay. The more important is, let's look at this one now. Okay. Okay, so close this out. Actually, need this. Okay, so I'm going to create a new example, not here. I'm going to call it modular. All right. So remember in HTML, we created a JavaScript file, we created CSS file as a separate file. And how do you reference to it? Put it in a script tag. For a CSS, you put it in a link file. All right. So Node.js also has that option. Now in Node.js, how do you link two different JavaScript files? Now, right now the way we are working, we just have one JS file. You cannot put everything in that JS file, right? You have to modularize it. You have to separate your code out at some point, right? Well, of course, you can put everything in one file as 10,000 lines of code, and then it will still work, all right? Just don't show it to me. But so how do you, if you have your two different modules, you have two different JavaScript files, how do you link them in Node.js? That's what we are going to look at. In HTML, how do we do it? We put our script tags, right? And then put all our JavaScript files. All right, so I'm going to create a file, and I'm going to call it main.js. And I'm going to call another superhero.js file. Okay, so I have these two files, right? I'm a good coder. I'm modularizing my modules. I'm separating everything in a different file. Now I want to link these two files. Now in Node.js, what you have to do is, it's called require. The keyword is require. Okay. What you do is you say var superhero, a variable, and then the keyword is require, and then over here you put in the file name that you are trying to refer, superhero. Okay, this is how you reference a different file from a different JavaScript file or a different Node.js file. Okay, again, let's suppose I have two. This is my whole project. All right, this is my main folder. In my main folder, I have two Node.js files, main and superhero. Okay, now in my main, I want to refer this file and do some operations. Okay, and how do I refer that other file? The keyword is called require. Okay, so I'm going to say require and then the path of the file that I'm trying to refer. All right, .js JS doesn't matter. It's smart. Node.js is smart enough to recognize that this is going to be a JavaScript file or a JS file. Okay. Now let's go back here and then. Oops. No. Let's create an object, var superhero. Okay. Let's give it some properties. Superhero name. Okay. Let's give some more properties. Okay. All right. So you can give some properties. Let's say friend.
None.
Whoa, hey.
How about this?
He's got friends.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
All right. So I created a JavaScript object. Okay, and that is in my different JavaScript file. Now remember when we were doing front-end JavaScript, right? Everything is a global variable. I was able to access it in my file over here, and everything is good. So let me comment this out. So let's suppose I want to access that variable superhero. Okay. Let's see. Let me go back to my. Okay, so I'm in my this one. I'm going to run my main.js. That's my starting point, and I get this error. Nice error says superhero is undefined. Right. The first thing it tells me is two separate files in Node.js are not. It's not like a global variable kind of deal. All right. If you have to refer to something, we need this keyword required. So even though both of these are in the same folder, right? This is my main folder. Both of them exist over here. I cannot like switch around and use this in Node.js. All right. So it's not like a global variable that's available everywhere. I have to do something extra to reference this variable over here. First of all, okay. So this is not going to run. It's going to give me an error, and that's the error. Okay. So how do I refer a different file? Again, the require keyword, and then you have to give in the path. All right, require and the path of the file that you're trying to access. Okay, that still is not enough. It still, it gives me an empty thing. All right, and why does it give me empty? Because I declared this variable, I required, but there's nothing inside it. Let's change the name so that we can, it's not a conflict. Superhero.
Superhero name.
Let's call this. So what I'm trying to say over here is that I'm trying to access this file, anything that is inside that file. That's what I'm trying to access. And when I do this, what am I trying to access? I'm trying to access a variable that is defined over here. Okay, so it says, well, this variable doesn't exist in this file. I don't know what you're talking about. It gives me an error, right? So basically, I cannot access anything outside this file right now. Okay, let's see what do I have to do if I want to access. Access this thing. Okay. So there's a keyword called exports. Okay. Now again, what is module.exports? Just by looking at it. It's an object. Why? Because there are curly brackets. Okay. So the file that you're trying to export, any data that you're trying to export, this is how you do it. So again, in my main.js, I'm trying to refer some data that exists in this file. Okay, so the file that is making the reference, that is trying to reach out to a different file, you have to say require and what file you're trying to access. Now, the file that is being accessed from somewhere else, towards the end of the file you have to add this keyword module.exports. Okay, and then you have to tell what are you trying to export, what are the variables that you want to be accessed from outside. So let's suppose I want this to be accessed from whoever requires my file. So I would say it's an object, so I have to create a key, a property name, and then I have to give it a value. What value am I giving? Superhero. And this refers to this thing. So what am I saying is that in my file I have a variable called superhero that I want to be accessed from outside. Okay, so I'm giving this permission that whoever requires or whoever imports my file from this file, you can access this variable. Okay, now how do I access this variable? And Visual Studio kind of helps you out. So let's suppose, let me comment this out. And then when you do a dot, you will see there's no help, or doesn't really show what you can export, because I'm not exporting anything from here. So uncomment this, go back to Visual Studio, you will see the first thing that pops up. So do this, let me clear this, and then I'm able to access everything. All right, one more time. So in Node.js, you will have code in different files, and you want to refer the code that is in a different file, right? So the first thing is I have two files over here, main.js and a super. You can name anything, it doesn't matter, all right? What am I trying to convey is that this is my main file. This is the starting point of my project, right? Within that project, there are multiple files. I have modularized my code. Everything exists in a different file. But this is the starting point. So in this, I'm going to refer to some variable that exists outside main.js. And how do I do it? I start with the require. I say require and the file path that has the information. Now, let's go back to this one. In this one, I have an object called superhero. All right. If I want this superhero object to be accessed outside, I have to create an object called module.export. This is the keyword that is in Node.js. You cannot rename, or you cannot use anything else. You have to do module.exports is equal to, and then this is an object, and within that object you can expose whatever you're trying to expose. Now let's suppose I have another variable here. Var let's say best superhero. Okay, this is a string. Okay, now am I exporting this best superhero variable?
No.
I'm not. Should I be able to access this from anywhere else? No, because I'm not access. So let's go back to our superhero file dot, and you see it doesn't help. It doesn't show that variable. So I shouldn't even be able to access. But let me go ahead. I'm kind of stubborn, so I'm like, no, I should be able to do it. So I'm going to try to access this. This is me a nice error saying undefined doesn't exist. There's no variable called best superhero. Okay. Now in this file, I do want this to be exposed outside both of these. So how do I do it? I just add a comma. It's an object, right? Property and the value. So this time I'm going to say best superhero. This is my property that outside file is going to access, and when they access that, what am I going to get? I'm going to get the value of this one, whatever this is.
And you can name the property whatever you want.
Exactly. I can name my property whatever I want. So this works. So what John is saying, let's suppose I just want to name it best. Right? Now in my calling file, this is going to change to best. Okay? So this, I can name this anything I want. Anything that I want the module that is going to access this module, I want it to be accessed by this keyword. That's what I'm going to name it. This thing corresponds to this part. I cannot change this because this is the variable that I declared. Okay, now this is true for string, objects, array, anything. It doesn't matter. So let's go ahead. If I want to create a array, superheroes array. Okay. Shouldn't be able to access because I haven't exported this superhero file dot doesn't show me, so I'm not able to access it right now. Let's go ahead and add this. So I'm going to call it superheroes array. Okay, so you should be able to access using this name. It kind of shows me the array that I'm trying to access. Okay, so I said you can do it same for strings, objects, arrays, even functions. So let's go ahead and create a function var print superhero. This is a function. Don't need this. Don't need this. What it does is it console logs. Let's print out the real name. So superhero dot real name. Okay, this is my function which is inside this file. What it does, it console logs the real name of this object. Okay. Can I access it outside? Not yet. So let's go ahead and expose this. So print superhero info. Let's call this, and then I'm going to export this function. Okay, just like a property, don't have to do curly parentheses or anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this. Do I need console log? Well, I'm kind of console logging over here, so I don't need to I just need to call this function now. And how do I call this function? Again, the variable that I did over here, dot, and then print superhero info. It's a function. I'm calling this function. So let's do this. And then I see the name at the end. Okay. Again, the two important parts is create the two files. The file that is being exported, all right, the variables, the functions, the object that you want to be exposed outside, you put it in your module.exports object, okay, and then the calling one, the one who's importing, this is called importing the file. So I'm importing superhero.js. So to import a file, you do require, and then anything that has been exposed by superhero.js file, you should be able to access it just like a object property. All right. Again, as I said, objects are a very important concept in JavaScript. You will see these everywhere. So Node.js kind of carries this over. So everything, if you see superhero, is basically an object which has these properties which are being exposed by module.exports. Okay. So now you have the ability, you don't have to cram everything in one JS file. All right, you can create different modules and then do it in this manner. All right, questions?
Yeah.
I
did it. Oh.
Yes, that's the important part, you understand. Again, we are going to see this require keyword a lot. And why a lot? Because we are going to be using some other node packages, some other libraries. We'll get to that. You will be, how do you bring those in your code? You do it like this, require. All right, you import these properties.
This is the first time doing activities I felt like completely retarded, so we're making progress.
Everybody good? Questions?
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay.
Oh, you just did the function print superhero.
Yeah, because the function.
Because it has the console and
Oh yeah, because I did the console log inside it. So I'm calling this function, and that kind of prints it out.
Oh,
Okay. All right. If no questions, let's do the next exercise, which is the last one. It's called bands. Let's go back here. Okay, so you just have the instructions again. So create a file, bands.js. Looks like you have to create an object. Okay, then create a second file called run.js. Loop over the values and console log them. Okay, so two different files, bands.js and then run.js. So you need to use the require and module.exports. Okay, so this looks like this is the run.js is the main one. So you're going to import bands.js in your run.js. Okay, and your bands.js is going to have module.exports. Okay, looks like there's only one object inside bands.js. So create an object, put this object, and then attach these two files. Start with console logging this to make sure you're able to access this object. Once you are done, then go on to the looping part. Looping part is kind of it's not simple. It's just just Google and see how do you loop through an object. You might already have done this in your projects, because you were using JSON. Those are objects, so you guys might already know how to loop through an object. Okay, but the important part of this is that you have two different files. You are importing bands.js in your run.js, and you're able to access this object. And if you didn't use it, let's see, loop to JavaScript object. Okay, looks like this is the syntax for var property in object. Okay, Google this part and see if you can complete the for loop. Yes.
Yeah, we would always loop through arrays before, right? So we can do that with objects, just with a regular for loop.
Not a regular for loop. It's a little bit different. That's what I was saying. Yeah, Google how do you loop through a JavaScript object? You know, and kind of do the research, and it's kind of similar. Yeah. So, so it says for var property in object. Find the syntax, print it out, console log, and see what you're getting. But before that, make sure you complete the export part. This is called bands. Let's create a folder bands. And then it says create two files, bands.js and run. So bands.js and then run.js. Okay. So I created a folder, I created two files, bands.js and run.js. So I did the difficult part. Let's do the rest of this. Make a JavaScript file called bands.jet exports an object of music, genres, and bands. Yes.
Mine moves through the properties, but then it says undefined 3 times.
Undefined 3 times.
He's like, yeah.
So what do you have?
Like it says, it's Green Day, Run DMC, Led Zeppelin, and then it says undefined.
So what's your syntax? What do you have?
For their
Property, okay.
and bands.
Like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is my variable
Okay.
for required.
And then what are you console logging?
Okay, then okay. Well, the thing I saw online said you had to put if bands dot has own property.
Well, yeah, we can get to that part, but
Okay.
now I'm looping through, right? I'm
Yeah.
saying there's
Yeah.
a variable called property in
Yeah.
bands, right?
Right.
So what I want to test it out before I proceed.
Okay.
So what are you console? What do I console?
Log bands dot property.
Bands.property.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Why? So bands. What does this tell you? Bands.property. Does your bands
Yeah,
object has something called property?
Yeah. Well.
No. Does it have? What does it have? What's the properties over here?
Right. Come correct.
Right. Is there something called property inside bands? Literally the word property. No. So you cannot do this, right?
Okay, it has to be the word.
So this is you cannot do bands.property. So let's look at this. What do you have? Var property,
Yeah.
right? How about you console log this thing? What is this? Console log this and see what is console logging.
Okay, now it logs Green Day, Run DMC, Led Zeppelin, Punk Rap Classic.
Okay. So what's the connection? Again, what is the property?
Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna comment something else.
Yeah, it should just be logging something. It shouldn't log everything.
Yeah, my for loop was totally wrong.
Okay.
Okay, now it's just logging punk rap classic.
Okay. So what are these? These are the
Those are the
property names,
okay,
right?
So, right, so we want it to log the
And how do you access these values now?
property.
So now it tells you that when you console log this, it gives you the name of the property, punk rap classic. I want the value of this property. How do you get the value?
property dot value.
Right. So property dot value will probably give you a syntax error. Try that. Right?
It says undefined.
Right. Why? How do you access this? The right way to do this is if you do
Okay. Yeah.
right band whatever the variable name is band.pump, then it will give you the right value, right?
Okay.
But we cannot use a dot notation because we don't know the name. What's the second way to access an object? Second way to access the property within an object. One is dot notation. What's the second one? Brackets. Excellent. So what do you say? Bands, this thing? My property. That's the second way to access the object, right? So what is happening? Bands is this object, and then it's like an array. This is the second one. Remember when we did objects, the first class? We did dot notation, and then if you had a space or something, how do you do it? You put it inside the square brackets and then try to access it.
So it's like I'm assigning a variable
Uh-huh.
to all of the properties in the band's object,
Right.
and then that's the right syntax to log the values as band's property.
Right.
Okay.
Because I cannot use the dot notation over here, so I need to go back to the second way I can access an object.
Okay.
And the second way to access an object is this syntax.
Why can't you use the dot?
Why can't you use a dot one? So the property, this thing is a variable that you have
Oh,
declared,
because- yeah. Okay.
right? It's not this one of these
So,
variables.
so you can't go bands dot property.
You cannot go that bands dot property, because if you say bands dot property, what it is saying is bands dot. Is there a word called property over here? It doesn't. So it doesn't. It says undefined.
He's like, I don't know how to respond to that.
What?
There's not a word for it. There's just like,
Yeah, it does.
there's no property there. Face just went straight. Like, I'm not responding to that.
Oh no!
He's like, I don't know.
No.
We're done.
Nope.
He did it. He's like, I'm done with you guys today. He's like, I can't anymore.
No, that's not what I
That's why he
meant.
made us take a break at 7:30.
7:30.
He needed
No, it's just too much sending you there. So really quickly, create a variable in bands var bands. Okay, and then I copy this array, this object from here. Okay, and how do I access this outside? Module.exports. Okay, it's an object. Let's call it band list so that nobody is confused. Bands. Okay. In my run.js var band. Let's call it band file. Require / gives me help, and now I can access band file dot band list. So let's console log to make sure this is working. Oops, come on. Where am I? Where am I? Where am I? We are doing band, so CD09. Node. So I'm able to access this. So this means I have made the right connection. Require, okay, and this one goes over there. Now the next one was looping through this. So I'm going to loop through this in my run.js for, let's call it var. We were calling it property. It's kind of confusing, so I'm going to call it key. And then band file dot band list. Okay, let's console log the key so that you guys can see what is happening in the keys part. Let me clear this. Okay, so when I console log keys, it gives me these property names. Okay, now how do I access the actual value? I cannot do key dot something, and the reason is there's no key property over here, right? These are more dynamic, so I need to refer back to my different syntax. So it's going to be band file, come on, dot band list, like an array, and I'm going to put in key. So this means it's going to go through this list. I'm going to find the first key punk, and it's going to list the value of that band. Okay, then it's going to go through wrap, it's going to get the value of wrap, then it's going to go through classic, get the value of that classic group. Okay, so this is more like a revision. Remember, I know people kind of forget that there's a second way to access an objects, so this is just another reminder. Okay, that's all. Sorry for 7 extra minutes. I'm not here Saturday, so I'll see you Tuesday. Again, please try to concentrate on Saturday. It's going to be, please go back, revise these exercises. You will be making some API calls using Node.js. So
Be there to hold my hand, Daniel.
I'll see you guys on Tuesday.